Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. All right, no public at the moment, so no public discussion. All right. What do we think of the minutes, folks? How are we feeling?
Motion to approve.
I actually caught a date. The party in the park is actually on the 19th. I don't know if that really matters for a change or not. I just caught it only because I've got it on my calendar.
Yes.
So, that's all.
I kept making that mistake. Good catch.
Got a motion to approve. We have a second here.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Got our sexiness coming up here. All right, item 4, reviewing the public art condition survey and report.
Okay. Well, in your agenda packet this week was a copy of the completed survey, public art condition assessment survey forms, and then their summary report that the Midwest Arts Conservation Center had completed for us. So they had conducted the sculpture assessment in the fall and then came back and did the murals in the spring. And as you can see in the report, it's very comprehensive and does a nice job of just outlining, any noted areas for repair, ongoing maintenance, issues that we should be aware of, as well as just getting a really solid record of all of our pieces, the materials they're made out of, the artists, all of that kind of thing. So I have invited Megan Randall, who conducted the sculpture survey for us, and she's available for any questions you guys might have about the process or what you've seen in the report and those survey forms. And this is just open for, I know it's the first time you guys have had an opportunity to actually see the report, and we've all been very excited about it. So this agenda item is really just an opportunity for you to comment, ask questions, give me any special direction you want. I noted in the memo what those kind of next steps would be, but we can talk about those if you think they should be different.
Megan, I was curious about what it would look like for you or your staff to come down and then train city staff on some of those like annual kind of maintenance things. Is that like a workshop or a one-day kind of training, or how I guess if you and Rachel have spoken about that, how that would look? I'm really excited about that potential for us to kind of take care of our own artwork, and so where we can.
Yeah, so one part of the deliverables of this survey is providing a set of proposals to the city, and one of the proposals could be like 2 of our conservators come down and we perform basic maintenance while training city staff on performing the same maintenance in years to come. And that would be primarily focused on washing as well as washing and waxing different sculptures that are suitable for that type of maintenance. And it can be kind of as long as short as the number of objects that we sort of talk about addressing in a single trip, but it would probably be like a 1 to 2 day event with city staff. It's the kind of thing we do all the time. It's like a very standard model for us to perform maintenance while training people to do it themselves.
Awesome. So I feel like, Ron, since you're the city staff member here, how are you feeling about this? Feeling good? Feeling ready to learn?
It's always a challenge, right? When we already have staff that have things to do already. It has not been uncommon, pretty much pre-COVID that whether it be park staff or mainly street staff were involved in maintaining our public art. So we've kind of gotten away from that, over the last few years. But I know that we're still continuing to do some stuff with the park staff. Street staff is really kind of, other than starting to build new art, we haven't been maintaining the art that's there.
Sure, and I guess
Yeah, but I mean, I think that, I mean, it's in line with what we've done in the past, so I don't, we'll have to find time to do it, but that's just like everything else.
just kind of curious if you're like, you're going to shoot me death rays or something for being like, oh, yay, city staff can do some of this.
No, and you know, there's piece, you know, like, for example, the art walk on Iowa Avenue, that's one that we've been struggling with trying to figure out what to do with. And, you know, having staff have some of that experience and know what they need to do from year to year to maintain those, it'll be better in the end.
So Megan had mentioned that as part of our agreement or our contract with them, they still can and will deliver 3 in-depth treatment proposals. So as she mentioned, the training could be one of them, and I think that one, I as staff would recommend, you know, that may be a good use of one. Megan, would you want to talk about maybe what some other communities would use those for, or options, so that this committee could think about those?
Yeah, I mean, if you go through the summary report touches on this a little bit, but the survey record, that like long 27-page record, at least for the sculpture side, and it's sort of mimicked in the mural side, gives ranks and priorities to things that we see as most in need of addressing. And so like my recommendation would be focusing on sculptures or objects in like the first 10 of those and seeing where they align with your priorities. The most urgent one is the 4-module piece, but that I think would be done by an outside contractor because it's a structural, possibly electric repair. But the one I would say is most keen from the perspective of using a conservation center to address would be the neighborhood of seasons. The 2 mosaic pillars, the sort of the bike path at Sycamore Trail. It has, I don't think it's at a structural risk, but it has risk of significant loss of material if not addressed because some of the mosaic tiles are lifting or gone. I think that would be a key moment to work either with the artist or with the community to make sure there's like a replacement plan in place, essentially, and then address the repairs at that time. That would be one that I would recommend. And then the one behind it, the historic markers, all pretty much showed significant corrosion. And it's a fairly straightforward treatment, like they need to just be deinstalled, cleaned or blasted and repainted, and potentially some of the plaques remade, but they're showing their age and could have structural issues if left to their own devices.
I do appreciate your thoroughness.
Are there other questions for Megan?
This is not directly related to this report, but just as we evaluate art going forward, what are the most common issues you see looking at tons of public art in different communities over time? Like, what are the most common sort of maintenance or structure issues that come up?
That's a great question. I would say from like a long-term planning perspective, having a repainting schedule is really important. Outdoor painted sculpture needs to be repainted. It just does. And so having kind of a schedule or understanding of that in your maintenance budget is pretty critical. And then developing relationships with people who can perform that painting. Like we can facilitate that, but there's also plenty of people out there who can do that too. That doesn't have to be conservation specific, but it's something I think is a critical part to keep in mind.
And can you remind us, how often would you recommend undertaking like a more comprehensive inventory like we did with this one?
I think about every 5 or so years, every 5 to 7.
So I do have a question over a specific item in here, the triaxial hemicylindrical that you just mentioned about getting repainted. So I'm the Parks Director, but we had talked at one point about not painting it since it was originally not painted. Do you think that's an option, or should it be painted? Because when it was originally installed, it was not painted.
Can you tell me the number?
It was
Oh,
priority
okay.
3, rank 6.
Yes. So you're saying it was originally unpainted?
Right, it was originally a Corten steel unpainted. It was only when it moved to City Park that it was painted for some reason, so we had talked a few years ago about just having the paint removed and leaving it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd want to be really clear about like why, like who painted it and why, and make sure you're not undermining like artist intent. But if it wasn't originally painted, you can.
Yeah, I think city staff
Absolutely take-
painted it at some point is what I think happened, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, then yes, that could be an option for that.
So then,
And we could weigh in on sort of how to do that, because you'd want the surface to sort of be even. And so there's ways to do like a couple of washing cycles, like if you were to remove the paint, to try to like bring that surface of the Corten up to the same patina level as the unpainted sections of it.
Okay.
and then if that were to be done, my question would be, would it be, I guess, quote, easier to maintain in a way? Because it would just be sealing once versus having to have it, painted? Or is it just more, in this particular case, about getting it back to perhaps the artist's intent and getting it, getting the paint off, and then it's, whatever maintenance, conservation work is what it is. It wouldn't necessarily be easier or harder.
Maintaining a uniform Corten object is infinitely easier than maintaining a painted Corten object. And we actually often recommend Corten is not painted. It's not a great substrate for paint.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So Megan, to help the committee understand maybe like what next steps are, once we identify what those 3 proposals we would like are, your team would draft those, and then we would determine when to move forward with them and what that cost would be. Is that how that works, or?
Yeah, once you determine sort of what 3 things, or like if you want to do 2 objects in a workshop, like whatever kind of combination of things that you want to have us move forward with developing proposals for, we will develop a full proposal, and that will include all final costs, and we will submit them to you. And those costs are good for, 6 months or so.
Okay.
And then are reevaluated depending on whether or not they're approved.
Okay.
But proposals can always be adjusted to, if like we submit something to you and realize you like want to address a different part of something, we can amend. It's not difficult.
Okay. And knowing the limited budget we work with, and probably many of the organizations you do, if we only have the funds to, for example, move forward with one proposal this year, then can we return to you next year and you just update if there's any cost change or anything like that? Does that sound right? Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. We would just update briefs as we need to, and the proposal itself would essentially be the same.
Okay. If we don't have any more questions for Megan, maybe we can let her go and then you can continue your conversation from there. But I don't want to cut anyone off if you haven't asked what you wanted to yet.
I'm just like, Rachel, I haven't heard from you, so I was just kind of like, anything for you?
Make sure. Cool. Okay, so it sounds like we're good for now. Thank you so much, Megan, for
you.
doing all of
Thank
it,
you.
but then also coming on and chatting with us today.
Yeah, happy to. Thank you all.
All right, we'll follow up soon. Thank you again.
Bye.
Recording in progress.
Maybe people who have been on this committee longer have more background, but I was surprised to see the highest priority one, something that was relocated relatively recently.
Yeah, I was kind of curious about that one because it seemed like any of the repairs or conservation work really isn't in, it didn't seem to be the piece itself per se, but then perhaps it wasn't, you know, it wasn't a lift to see it, but then it was, seemed to really be, it's the base and the electrical problem.
Yeah, my understanding based on my conversation with Megan was that one was rated such a high priority because they didn't understand what the structural issue was. So they were concerned about if, you know, not knowing what those fissures are like underneath, they were more concerned about it being a safety issue, I think, than anything. So we'll probably just have to look at that a little closer ourselves to determine if it's that high of a priority.
Because the concrete piers are new, right? The original was on the ground.
Right, the concrete piers are 3 or 4 years old. I mean, it hasn't been very long, so we just need to get up on a ladder or something and see what's going on up there.
Okay,
Yeah, we'll do that.
cool. All right.
I can, their priority number 2, the entrance to Sycamore Trail. We should check the notes because Marcia did check in with the artist not too many years ago, and I want to say we couldn't get the replacement parts for it or something, or the more of the tiles, or she wasn't. There was some reason why we couldn't move forward with the repairs at that time, so we should consider that. I'm not sure that it's possible.
And this, because I know that piece came up in conversation with the park and the mosaics, and I can't, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
so
I
we
can't
took
remember
the ones
park.
out
Yeah.
at Pleasant, gosh, now you got me which park it was. Yeah.
So, I mean, I do think that one would be a good one to start with in terms of that conversation before the piece gets to the point where it just, there isn't, you know,
Yeah.
it's so bad, there is nothing to do but take it out, you know?
Is the artist around?
It was a local artist at the time
She's
it
not at
was
City,
me.
I know she's not teaching at City High anymore, but I don't know if she's local or not.
Yeah, Marcia
so-
still had contact with her
Yeah.
3, 4, 5 years ago, somewhere, you know, not too long, but I don't know.
Now that you mention that, Julie, I think it would be good if the replacement parts can't come in, then I think that's a piece to start thinking about, well, what are we doing? How do we move forward with it? And then what is perhaps what's the timeline on that piece? Or what is going to be the responsibility and conservation to happen with that piece? And what is the you know, lifespan? And what does that look like before it's
Yeah.
just taking it out?
And for the rest of the committee to know that the similar ones we had in the other park, Pheasant Ridge, Pheasant Hill Park.
Pheasant Hill, yeah.
We actually had to take those out because it became such a safety hazard. We had to decommission them, so.
But there's some differences with this piece, right? Because the issue that we had with Pheasant Hill was they were basically ground mounted, right? So
Right.
they were, and so with these, when we installed these, we raised them up so that mowers and weed eaters and that wouldn't be running
Yeah.
into it at the lower levels.
Yeah, but it's kind of, and there's not the mowing happening here like there was in the middle of that park. The problem there was the tiles were falling off and getting in the mowers and
Right.
projectile around the park. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So Rachel, do you want us to kind of have a general sense of three proposals this meeting, or?
It doesn't have to be necessarily. I would, if you have like general feedback of, yes, we know we want training, and then maybe the top two conservation priority items, or if there's one in there that wasn't in that top 10 ranking, for example, that you think we might need, you would be interested in seeing a proposal on, like, I'd want to know that. But I mean, we do have to get back to them somewhat soon. I don't think it needs to happen today. It could happen at the next meeting. So if you want me to follow up on, some of these initial items and see if we can have staff look at the Snelson sculpture in the meantime, see if I can track down the Neighborhood of Seasons artist before next meeting. I could try to work some of those trails and then we can circle back to it next meeting. Or if you have a alternative path you'd prefer, I'm happy to do that too.
No, I mean, that sounded good. I would be really curious, and I don't know if this would have to be agreed upon as one of the proposals, but as Julie mentioned, that triaxial hemicylindrical, I mean, I do think there is, I would be curious if it's something where Parks and Rec staff would have some of that history of when it was painted, and sort of that process, because it does seem, conservation on that piece will be a process, or taking off the paint and then, moving forward, but of just maybe following up on that one as well. And that might just be asking staff, what they know.
I don't know. I think it was painted when it was moved to City Park, but so we wouldn't have many staff that go that far back, but I will find out.
No, I'm just looking at the description and trying to figure out.
I could look in Marcia's files too,
Yeah, I think we should.
see if there's anything.
Because Marcia had agreed at one point to that staff, we should take the paint off. We just didn't ever get to it.
Okay,
Yeah.
So-
okay. Yeah, it really does feel like if it didn't have paint to begin with, it probably shouldn't have paint,
Yeah.
but,
Especially considering that's easier moving forward.
Yeah.
To conserve, yeah.
yeah.
I'm interested in her recommendation, though, with the difference in weathering. If it's been painted for a long time, it won't match when you take it off compared to the,
Yeah, so
it sounded like she had some ideas there. So that's one I'd actually be interested in, if we took the paint off, to see what we could do to sort of match it.
I was really, I'm fascinated by this when this project comes up eventually, it's what's going to happen? We'll find out.
So maybe check into a few of these things and then decide next meeting
Yeah.
what our
Yeah.
priorities are.
I can do that. Maybe I can put that spreadsheet together and include some notes on these items we've talked about, or these pieces we've talked about, and then maybe Ron, Julie, and I can also meet and just, if there's other ones that clearly stick out as, what their recommendation is, may not necessarily be what we believe it should be based on other historical knowledge, that kind of thing, we'll make those notes too. So we'll just start there and then circle back next time. But it's a really great starting spot. I mean, to have all this information is great.
I think one of the things, I mean, clearly there's some major maintenance pieces that they talk about, like the waxing, the cleaning, you know, those would be like better things to have them come and do for us as a staff, because it's going to affect the majority of the art that we have, right? Just based on the number of, you know, sculptures and, you know, the bronze pieces that we have. So, I mean, there's some of those pieces that we could focus on individual pieces, but I think we may want to be a little bit broader to be able to give staff the ability, the knowledge to do some of that routine maintenance.
I don't think I'm following. You're suggesting.
So you know, they talk about the Orvis wash. They talk about the bronze, the waxing of some of the bronze pieces and some of the sculptures.
Yeah.
Those are things that are manual maintenance, should be annual, which probably hasn't been done since the day they were put in.
Yeah.
Or maybe has been done when we have graffiti, like, you know, in 2020. There's some graffiti on the Irvin Weber statue, right? So, I mean, there's just some of those things that if we really want to have a broader impact on our public art inventory, having staff have that knowledge.
Do that training or
The
workshop,
training
yeah.
piece is going to be more important, I think, than specifically looking at individual
Yeah.
pieces.
Well, and
I agree.
No, absolutely. I was like, man, somebody gets to play with paste wax and like the bronze, and then you've got the cool solution. Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess I just don't want to overlook that there's going to be some broader impacts that could be there versus individually picking pieces that they've prioritized. You know, for example, the Snelson piece, I'm guessing that that's, I mean, they even say that's probably way overstated as far as priority, based on how, you know, the less life that it's had at this location than it's had previously. So I'm not as concerned about that piece as maybe they were, just not having, you know, the understanding of what that looks like.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm interested on your guys' take as well on something like the fountain, right? They're talking about the art pieces of the fountain. I've heard Josh's rant about the fountain, piece of the fountain, like that one in the art walk. I think there's more to it.
We're getting ready to refurbish it anyway as a larger
Okay.
project, so I think that'll be part of that anyway.
Yeah, this might be a good time to just provide an update on the literary walk part. We had not included it in the assessment because we had signed a separate agreement with the artist to, I had walked and taken pictures of everything and made notes on the condition and sent that to him. And in September, we signed an agreement that he would, you know, review and put together a plan for us of, you know, what he thinks we needed to do to kind of bring that back up to a good spot and then maintain it going forward. I had asked for that plan to be back in December. I didn't receive it, followed back up after I returned from my maternity leave and haven't heard back. So if I continue to be unsuccessful in getting that plan from the artist, you know, we may want to think about if Midwest Arts is back in town sometime to do one of these trainings, or they're working with the Stanley or something like that, we may want to ask them to go and take a look at the lit walk too. It would be maybe an extra cost, maybe not. I guess we'll see what they say, but that's obviously a big one that we hadn't included because we thought we had another plan, and that's not following through.
So Ron, I wanted to ask to make sure I was understanding from your perspective. I totally love the idea of having staff training to work on the bronzes, because we have quite a few bronzes, and they seem like once they can be up to snuff, they can be maintained fairly easily. So were you thinking not just staff training, but then having another proposal for doing some of those sculptures themselves, or would that be kind of a piece to you?
I think it could go together, right? I mean,
yeah.
because my understanding of the training really is we're going to come in and do it, show you how to do it.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
That's what I had, but just wanted to make sure I was understanding. I'm all for having those bronzes, knowledge here in town for those. Yeah. So then it sounds like maybe the staff training / bronze kind of proposal essentially, and then perhaps the, I can't remember, the neighborhood, the entrance to Longfellow Trail project. And then the sort of third was kind of, I don't know, do you have thoughts on perhaps a draft third? I mean, I know you have some backtracking and in research and going back through Marcia's contacts and whatnot, Rachel. but-
Yep, I think I have the direction I need maybe to
Cool.
work on this a little further, and then we can come back next meeting. And if it's easier for you, I can just make a recommendation at that time of maybe what those 3 proposals are, and then you can react to it based on what we've talked about today and then what we find out between now and then.
Okay. Okay. Final thoughts from anybody? Okay. Looks like we're moving on. Looking at the Public Art Strategic Plan. I have the revised draft.
Yep, so I included a redlined version in your agenda packet. That was, my next attempt at trying to respond to those conversations we had last time in the work session, and thank you, Sophie, for all the note-taking. That helped. If you have more wordsmithing you want to do, I can pull that up on the screen, and we can do that today. Ideally, whether that's today or if you feel like we need to push it again, we could do it next time. But once you approve the final language, then I'll send it to communications to get it designed. I just didn't want them to spend time on it if we were going to have more edits. So again, you're just seeing like a bare bones version, but hopefully we can get all the language locked in exactly how we want it, and then we'll have our new plan.
I like it. I
Yeah,
don't
it looks
see
good.
much need for change at this point.
No, I think you hit all the points that we talked about last time, so I like it.
Seems very attainable within our time period, and yeah, it really highlights the things that we want to focus on.
I agree.
So then do you need us to have a motion on approving? Okay.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yay, that's exciting.
Staff updates from folks?
The only one I have is just a reminder that we have planned a ribbon cutting for Uplift, which is the South District bus stop bench and sculpture that was completed over the winter. So that will be held on Thursday, June 19th at 6 p.m. at Fair Meadows Park. The party in the park starts at 6:30 p.m. So folks can come for the ribbon cutting. Both the artist and the mentor are planning to attend, so they'll be able to talk a little bit about their process and the project, answer any questions, guests might have, and then, we'll have the big scissors and the ribbon, and it'll be exciting. So I hope many of you can attend, and it'll just be a nice way to put a cap on that project. It took a few years, but I think it turned out really nicely, and it's kind of a cool piece for the community. So that starts at 6 p.m.
All right, we've got a no down there. Ron, anything exciting?
No.
All right, no. Okay, old or new business? Seems like a no. All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, do we need a second? Yes. Maybe. All right, we're good? Voting? All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Did someone second?
Ooh.
Seconded.
All right.